In this video, we will be tying together 6 seemingly unrelated sets of facts. It may make sense at the end. Here we go. Number 1. Transportation is responsible for 16% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Of that 16% chunk, 39% is from passenger cars. Therefore, a little over 6% of total greenhouse gas emissions are from passenger cars. Number 2. It's almost correct to say that 100 companies are responsible for 71% of greenhouse gas emissions. It is correct to say that 100 companies are responsible for 71% of industrial emissions, which in turn generate 30% of total emissions. So a fair statement would be 100 companies generate 21% of total emissions. Number 3, Europe wants to go fully electric by 2035. Electric cars cost an average of $11,000 more than a petroleum engine car. There are over 1.4 billion cars on Earth. Mining materials and manufacturing lithium batteries for cars generates enough CO2 to warrant having to drive an electric vehicle over 100,000 kilometers to reach parity with a gas guzzler. What helps is if the electrical grid is driven by renewable resource-based power systems. If it isn't, if it's driven by coal, it will take a long time for that car to break even. On top of all that, only 5% of lithium batteries are recycled. That leaves the other 95% to start fires in landfill sites. They're very good at this. Number 4. 66% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. Corporate America has over $2 trillion in cash stashed away. Number 5. CO2 scrubbers remove CO2 from the air. They've been used in submarines, spacecraft, rebreathers, and controlled atmosphere chambers for several decades now. There are several types of CO2 extraction methods available. And finally, number 6. Most scientists say that the CO2 issue is the biggest threat humanity faces in the coming decades. So let's recap. 1.4 billion cars generate roughly 6% of greenhouse gas emissions, while 100 companies generate 21%. These companies have trillions of dollars in cash, and they say extracting CO2 from their emissions would be too expensive, so we're going to make people who can't afford electric cars and are not a significant generator of CO2 pay for the problem they're not causing. So to do so, we're going to throw hundreds of millions of toxic and highly flammable batteries into landfill sites. So let's recap the recap. The largest producers of greenhouse gases with all of the money say fixing the problem is too expensive, so the smallest producers of greenhouse gases have to sacrifice and pay for it. In the background, science is saying if we don't fix this problem, we are all doomed. So one of these groups who don't drive cars is full of crap. We need to figure out which one it is and then do something about it. As a side note, a bunch of power-hungry delusional control freaks in California service their personality disorders and convince the state to clamp down on two-stroke engines. Two-strokes are commonly used in boats and dirt bikes. Motorcycles generate 1.3% of transportation emissions. That's about 0.2% of total emissions. Motorcycles use 2- and 4-stroke engines. Rumor has it, even though they banned two-stroke engines effectively, California still has a CO2 issue. If this is how we're going to go about solving this problem, we're screwed.